Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette, and I'm glad you're with us to stay curious with the one and only Carlton Bailie beside me here. Hey, CB, how are you
I'm
today?
doing good. I'm doing good. It's always a pleasure to be here, and it just I get goosebumps when I come down here because this place is real.
Oh,
This is
yeah. Oh, good.
this
Good.
is
But we
this
get
is
goosebumps looking at what fashion you're going to bring us.
ah!
And there you have your cat in a spacesuit there, looking good. And love that. And you've got Fodzilla there with you.
Fozzie, of course, is
Fo-
here.
Fozzie's in his
NASA suit today.
NASA suit today. That's pretty cool there. The mascot of how
About
many launches you think old Fozzie's seen there next to your on
two,
top of
three
your deal?
hundred since STS 115.
Awesome.
He's got his little NASA suit on.
Well, we're going to talk to Carlton Bailie, who has witnessed and photographed over 600, over 700 rocket launches in his 4-decade career that started first professionally with the launch of Challenger on January 28th, 1986, right?
It did. It did. It's like start at the top and work your way down because yeah, I had
Well, we're going to get into that. Carlton's going to tell us a little bit about that story. And when I go like that, that means,
stop.
yeah, because we could talk 2 hours with Carlton, I'm sure about that. But you might have a question or two about his impressions of that day. But he's got a good little program put together here that outlines the whole thing pretty well. And yeah, what a way to start your career is to see one of the greatest tragedies in American history, space or whatever, in there. So, but what you been up to, CB, here on the Space Coast? I almost wanted to wear shorts today. Finally got a Florida winter day.
It was in the 80s, I think. You wake up and you see it's bright and sunny outside, and you're like, okay, well, you don't know what to wear until you open the front door. And is it going to be one of those days where you got 4 layers, and by the time you get to work, you're down to 1 layer, and by the time you go home, you're back up to 4 layers? Or we might have had our
Yeah,
winter.
right. Yeah, we may have. There's our friend Mark Usiak saying, "Good day, gents." Dean Babcock's greeting us. Man Space is Mitch Rothman. You met Mitch now a few times.
Yes.
Greetings to everybody at ASM. Nice to see CB and Fodsy, he says. And Tommy Usiak's on there saying hello to you, CB. And Neil 1030, headline on YouTube still says Bob Castro film archivist. Well, thank you for giving us a head up on that, Neil. We'll check that out after the show and get that changed, maybe. Marty's, or my co-producer's got the furrowed brow there to wonder what that was all about. But
If it wasn't for Mark and Tom Usiak, I wouldn't be sitting here right today. I mean, I started, but they kept me. I don't know whether to thank them or vilify them. It's like,
yeah, right. Yes, exactly. It's a unsung career. The news business, particularly photographers, is a lot of hurry up and wait some more, and then have when you're hurrying, you have a bunch of people in authority that think they're in authority, that want to tell you exactly what to do and how to do your job.
exactly. And
Yeah,
you just smile and listen if you want to be invited back.
yeah, yeah. That's absolutely right. So, thanks, Neil. 1030 there. We'll check that. We can always correct that after the show. But glad that you found us live today. We got a couple events in space history that I wanted to bring up. And Marty, where did I put my, my pictures? I know I printed one out and kind of got distracted. And now, did I leave it up there? Okay. Well, I kind of do need my pictures. Are they laying over there? On my desk there. That's the frame. All right. Well, we'll deal with it here like this, off the cuff. There we are. Marty Winkle getting my script here of our slides that we have today. We're a nonprofit. We print them out black and white, usually on the back of another piece of paper. That's how frugal we need to be and happy to be. We want to remind everybody that, okay, my image isn't working, Marty.
There we go.
I made it small, but my image isn't coming up, Marty. Marty, my image is not coming up on my No pictures. You checking that? We got a little technical problem here. We'll look at here real briefly, but the images, there we
There,
are. There we go. Thank you, Marty. Space Memorabilia Show, February 22nd, 2025 at Beachside Hotel. You'll be there, and tell people what they can get there if they're local.
it's you can find if it's space related, you're going to find it there. The people that you find there, not only, and even if you don't buy anything, the stories they can tell you. They can tell you the stories behind how they got what they've got,
Mm-hmm.
and the stories behind what they're trying to find a new home for. I don't say I try to sell things to people. I try to find them a new home,
Yeah.
a better home kind of thing. So I'll have 3 tables, and I'll be finding homes for a lot of things, I hope.
We have a lot of a dozen other vendors there, and so if you're local or within a driving distance, we're going to be announcing who the vendors are. This is just going to be 3 weeks away, so we've got pretty much everybody lined up, and now we just need to do the advertising and get the buyers there. And ooh, what happened there? I lost my. Oh, I know what happened there, Marty. Let me go here this way. Well, all right. I loaded up a Shuttlefest 4 slide. I don't know where that ended up, but for Shuttlefest 4, maybe that'll pop up later here. Shuttlefest 4 is rocking and rolling. Carlton, I understand you're going to be on a panel with Tom Usiak.
Yeah, he's invited me to be on his Hubble Space Telescope. I'm going to go over with him. I've got pictures. I guess we got to see it in the clean room. We didn't physically get to go into the clean room. They kept us on the outside glass. Saw it once when it was horizontal and once when it was vertical, as right before it was put into the payload, I guess.
You'll love to see those pictures, and that'll be your main contribution because we have got Jim Niehaus, who is the godfather of the IMAX camera.
I've known Jim since almost as long as Tom and Mark.
All right. Well, he's going to join our panel there, and because we're going to have John Grunsfeld and Joe Tanner there, both trained by Jim Niehaus. Is that how his last name's Niehaus? On the IMAX camera. We're going to kind of just extend the afternoon into that in there and just get a lot of great feedback from the astronauts and their guy that trained them. And
he's genuinely a nice guy.
Tickets, yeah, he seemed great on the phone. He lives in Rockridge nearby here. Can't wait to participate. And Joe Tanner, can't wait to see him. Hadn't seen him in a while. I've been in contact with Joe. He's in, and I said, Joe, this is what we want we want Shuttlefest to be all about, the fellowship of you getting together, not just with the space loving community, but with some of your old friends that you hadn't seen in a while. So we're looking forward to that. Well, something we're all looking forward to. Well, look in our rear view mirror, space history after a bunch of catastrophes. January 31st, 1958 is when America put its first satellite, Explorer 1. There it is, artist conception. Werner von Braun, Dr. Van Allen, and J.L. Pickering. Not J.L. Pickering. Yeah, it is J.L. Pickering. Was the scientist at Jet Propulsion Lab.
No, Pickering is a book writer, author, isn't he?
No, he was the...
that was before my time.
Anyway...
Sorry.
That picture was all around the American newspapers at the time after all these failures were publicly done. The U.S. Naval Research was involved. The Army ballistic missile range are the ones that put it up, and von Braun's crew there. Yes, Marty, we got a question or comment.
Well, we have a question, but I have a question first. Did you indicate that was von Braun in that picture? Because it's not.
In this picture?
Yeah, it's Pinkerton and...
That is Werner von Braun. I'm pretty sure that, Marty.
In the bottom one, yeah.
Yeah, the bottom one. That's a classic
The
picture.
bottom right.
That's Jim. That's Van Allen
Van
of
Allen,
the
right.
University of Iowa in the middle, and
Okay.
Von Braun on the one end. And
Okay, my fault then. I do have a question from Dean Babcock to Carlton. Carlton, did you and the UCX develop your own photos back in the day?
Um, After a period of time, yes, because I was working in a photo lab. So I did not develop them like Tom would to go in and do them by hand. I would go in and use the machines in our photo lab at the drugstore where I was working at. But yeah, for the most part, I did.
Tommy chimes in there, except for Kodachrome, the color film, is that was a special process only at the Kodak labs around the country. But if you had other slide film that was inferior in holding color, you had the
Ectochrome,
Ektachrome. You had little kits you could buy. I miss those.
T-Max,
No, that was black and
black
white.
and
Was
white,
the
yeah.
T-Max. I wanted to say what the I used to buy those color kits for the slides because that was the way at presentations you could take a picture in the morning and have it in your slideshow in the afternoon. Was to do your own E6
E6
processing.
slides, yes.
Yeah, E6 slide processing. That was about. I missed that there, Tom. That was a good deal there. I would flip people out on slideshows. How'd you get that picture to be so quick? And you don't let them know what you're doing. So, all right. We also had a wonderful January 31st, 1962, 3 years after our first launch, is when Ham, the chimp, did a suborbital flight that astronauts were training for. There's Ham in his seat at the famous Hangar S. And you know about Hangar S, of course.
Um,
All right, I'll tell you a little about Hangar S. There, Hangar S is where the astronauts trained. That was their first home where they had like bunk beds and so forth to live. And on the other side of it was the primates. Ham and his compadres, the chimpanzees, were there. And though it was kind of on the other side of the building, Marty, do you know much about this of being out in space so much? It smelled between the
I can imagine.
you worked at the Akron Zoo,
Yeah,
so
I know monkeys. Monkeys, no good.
so have you ever heard stories about that, Marty? You can share.
No, not about the odor, but the only thing
You'll establish that's a fact, though, for me. Yeah.
I heard about that. But Von Braun was in Hangar S also.
Yes,
His
Von Braun
office.
was in Hangar S. He also Hangar C. They have his office in there now. So what did the astronauts, the cream of the crop, they're these stinky primates are there over there, So what they did was they bought the Holiday Inn, that's now the Comfort Inn, on Cocoa Beach. And that was how they got out of this situation there. But very famous building, that is where it all started. And Ham the chimpanzee did a 15-minute suborbital flight. And then February 5th, not February 5th, and February 5th is the landing of Apollo 14 on the moon. May 5th is when Alan Shepard. Yeah, they waited January, February, March, April. They waited 3.5 months between putting a human up there. With Ham was just fine, though. I've heard a lot of stories about Ham from the old timers, Carlton. And when he was shown, like the next day, the Mercury capsule that he flew in, he ran and went up in the rafters of the building he was in. He didn't want to be near that anymore.
I can imagine.
He didn't like the noise, apparently, and all that. He had enough. But he lived to be a ripe old age, like 30 or something at the National Zoo. But that's history today. Our first satellite, Explorer 1, and first mammal to go to space. Well, Carlton and I sometimes get involved in things we don't think we're ever going to get involved in. So John Zarella texted me and asked me if I'd come to dinner tonight with the Fram 2 crew. And you got the same communication.
I did.
And I'm thinking Corey McLenithan in an NHRA dragster that was sponsored by Fram.
Well, my first instinct was NASCAR. NASCAR, Richard Petty, but not.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's STP.
Yes, right.
So then I had to look up Fram 2, and I realized that this is cool.
Yeah, in May they're going to launch a private um, SpaceX Crew Dragon, the Resilience one, and 4 rookies are going to go to space. They're going to orbit the Earth around the poles, Carlton. And so I really didn't know anything about this till last night. So there is the orbit of it in the Aurora. They will have the cupola that was so cool on the St. Jude's Inspiration 4 mission.
Hmm.
And I saw the Dr. Cyan Proctor at Wednesday at the Orlando Spacecom. It was on that mission. And you've got Cheng Wang is all these are rookies. Chun Wang is a billionaire sponsor of all this, and he's in the middle there. And on the left is Eric Phillips, and Eric has an extensive history of going to the North and South Poles. And then you have 2 women there, Jeanette Mickelson and Rebecca Rogue. And these are some fabulous women biographies I looked up. We're looking forward to eating with them today. One of them went with astronaut Terry Virts on a pole to pole circumnavigating the Earth and broke the record in a Gulf Stream with 8 other people, about 40 hours, I think it was. With astronaut Terry Virts was involved with that, so I can't wait to ask. I think Rabia was involved in that, and Jeanette is a cinematographer, all kinds of awards for her work, and she did a book. Yeah, we'll have plenty of time to talk about them for sure there. So, 3 to 5 day mission. They plan to observe the Earth's polar regions through Dragon's cupola at 250 to 264 miles up. No, that's good. All right. Leveraging insight from space physicists and citizen scientists to study unusual light emissions resembling auroras. One of those is called STEVE, Strong Thermal Emission Velocity Enhancement. So we'll be looking forward to this crew to be launched in the late spring. So
And a polar orbit from Florida is very unusual.
very hard. They'll probably go south, and they have to take a hard left to avoid Miami sticking out down there, probably. And like CB and I were talking in our pre-production meeting, Vandenberg is where they have the north-south polar because there's
You can go due south.
you can go due south and not go over any of Florida or California, and so maybe they'll make that a man-rated out there once this catches on, maybe. But no shuttle went over the poles. There was one that went an inclination about 60 something. Also, the Russians have done the best inclination, going up, I guess 67 degrees or something like that. 90 degrees is right at the poles. And Fram too. Where did they get that? Like we said, Fram was a sailing ship, uh, and that was here. The Mickelson ladies from Norway. Phillips is from Australia, and Germany for the lady named Rogue. It was a sailing ship. Here it is. In honor of the Norwegian ship that made pioneering voyages to Arctic and Antarctica between 1893 and 1912. So this is on par with the Discovery and the Endeavor, and they wanted to fly in Endurance, which was Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic vessel. Called Endurance is the other Crew Dragon that they've rotated out. Don't know how many times you've used these. Going to have to look that up, Carlton, but we're looking forward to that. So, a little space news going on. We'll break bread with the Z-Man and see what that's all about tonight, huh?
Always something.
Well, he's not paying.
Well,
Maybe get a cannoli out of him.
listen. I'll buy him a drink or two to have this opportunity. So it's what a fine gentleman, and to be honored
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
invited.
John Zarell is awesome. He did a great job at our astronaut memorial that we'll be putting up maybe this weekend on YouTube. That fabulous event. Well, CB, I'm going to let you do a lot of the talking here, and then make sure that we keep a nice pace here for everybody, of course. But there, you got some beautiful photography, my friend, of the before that this. In a nutshell, tell us when you came on the coast here. What was that like? Teacher in space, your first launch. The press corps was the dome, right? At the
Right. It
time,
was a dome. It
it was
was
a
the geodesic, I
yeah
guess, it
geodesic dome
left over
outside the
from
VAB was
the bicentennial.
okay.
Um, I had followed the space program since the 60s before Alan Shepard flew, and I had subscribed to a magazine called Countdown out of Athens, Ohio. The gentleman was an English professor at university there in Athens, and I wrote him. I said, "Hey, you all you do is NASA photos. You need somebody on the scene." I was trying to weasel my way in, and he said, "What are your qualifications?" I said, "Well, I know where I was when I was at this. I got my own equipment. I work cheap." He says, "That's best qualifications. Got your own equipment. You work cheap."
Yeah.
So he said, "Go do a story." So I did a story about the dedication of Pad 39B. And he said, "This is better than what we've been paying people for." I got you into the next launch. It's going to be a festive circus atmosphere. Relax, kick back, figure out what doors are closed that you can open, what doors are open that you can close, read upside down. 3 weeks, there's going to be another launch, and you better know what you're doing. Well, unfortunately, the first launch I did was 51L Challenger. And I mean, I'm not going to say I would be here today if that hadn't have happened. Everything happens for, but there was 300, maybe 350 news media there for that launch. I think it was not a very large crowd, and I remember talking to Jim Mizell, I think his name was, saying like they're getting ready to open up Vandenberg. And this was a couple days. This was 2 nights before the night of the 26th. I said they're going to open up Vandenberg, but the press site is so far away. It's 8-10 miles away. You got to come up over the mountains. And he looked at me. He says, "No, people are going to be there every time because one of these times something's going to happen, and they don't want to be sitting at home when it happens. And so you're always going to have people covering these things. You might not have as many, but you'll always have people there." And 2 days later, his words came very true.
Hmm. Well, you've got some stunning pictures here, and a little Carlton posted his entire kind of story about this, and I'm glad you did on his Facebook page. So if you're a Facebooker, go to Carlton Bailie and check this out. There's a cool picture of 51L.
Now, this was like 2 days before. This was the day before. Now, you're a photographer. You know about heat waves,
Mm-hmm.
and when you shoot at the press center, there's you're shooting over a body of water, and it could be in the morning of the launch. It was like 30 degrees, so it was very, very cold. But the water is a lot warmer, so you're going to have heat coming off the water. This was the day before. There wasn't cold. It wasn't heat waves. It was a very, very clear shot. You'll see in a later picture, possibly, the heat waves that were so evident.
As Carlton starts there, what was to have been the dream of a lifetime for me ended in a massive ball of fire and smoke. And there's a picture with I cropped that out of there to use as a backdrop here.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Mark Usiak, for sending these. That's a beautiful photograph of a Challenger bathed in the twilight there. That's a hard photograph to take, folks, on celluloid film
Canon
like
TX.
this, and balance the hot xenon lights against the sky there. So you
Oh my
really
goodness,
did that good.
a Canon TX with film, not knowing what to do. You had a little circle, you had a little line, and you tried to line the two up.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
These people today, forget it. They'll never be able
and
to do
if you set the ASA right,
Right.
maybe you forgot that you were shooting, 400 earlier in the day, and you didn't crank it back to 100 for this one there. So, all right, we'll have, and there's ignition.
Now this is the morning of, obviously, but you can see now it
The
looks
heat
like
waves
it's
you're talking about
right. You can
across the.
see that it looks like it's out of focus, but it was as focused as it possibly could be. I was using an 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain telescope, and with a camera adapter,
Huh.
and because it was so focused in so far, close in, zoomed in so far, that there was a lot of heat waves. They, in fact, 2 or 3 minutes before launch, and the thing they tell you with telescopes, don't ever point it at the sun. Don't ever point. I had to, because ice was actually forming on the inside of the telescope.
Oh wow!
That's how cold it was that morning.
You can just don't look through it as you're
Right,
pointing it up
right,
in there.
right.
And that's about 2,000 millimeter focal length there
Correct.
for you all out there. I've actually got a couple of those 8-inch Schmidts. And there's the glorious crew, and of course the beautiful launch. And we've been doing ceremonies here for a week about these events. And February 1st to tomorrow is well, it's a Saturday, and that's when it happened, on a Saturday too. I was watching cartoons with my daughter when we saw the streak on CNN. So, but there's another beautiful picture.
Again, that was the 26th, the night of the 26th, when they did what they call the RSS rollback. They took the news people out on a bus. The
RSS
sunset,
is
the rotating service structure.
that's all the grid stuff you'll see there.
And there was a delay, and some people went back, and it was starting to delay. Finally, they took everybody back, and then they said, well, we're going to take everybody back, but we'll bring them back out when we figure out what's going on. And that happened, and then I got to see, I don't even know how to describe what I saw with the xenon lights and the orbiter just uncovered.
Yeah, there it is. Beautiful. It's got to be one of these things that the picture probably doesn't portray, like you say, the atmosphere, the size involved. And we're so used to seeing this, and now you were too, because you did lots of shuttle launches, but seeing it for the first time.
Well, the first time, and again, 40 years ago, I didn't have the best equipment. I was using, I probably bought it at Sears at the time, kind of equipment, but I did what I could with the best I could with what I had. And I look back now, and it's a lot better than I thought it was, and it was just, it's mind numbing. And
Another beautiful shot of the stack. This is the night before.
no, this was again the 26th.
26th.
And then we went back the next morning. They scrubbed. I didn't go the night of the 27th. I'm not sure they had a service structure rollback for the media. Plus, I had a real job at the time at SeaWorld. So I didn't go the night of the 27th. I just went back early the morning of the 28th.
Well, we're talking with Carlton Bailie, who looked like that 39 years ago, as the 1986 was when the tragedy was. And if you all have a question, Carlton, about that night, about what the atmosphere was in the press corps, that sort of thing.
It was cold.
It was
Very
cold there. Yeah.
Basically,
But
my
you spent
first
those years
selfie.
in Akron, Ohio, so you knew what cold was.
Right. I still had my cold weather winter gear. And I remember this.
Who took that picture?
I
you?
actually, that was my very first selfie or second selfie out there, I guess maybe. I set the camera up when the camera had a timer on it. Cameras
Yeah.
used to have timers on them.
That little knob on the front that you run
Right. And I
back,
put
yeah.
it for 10 seconds. I had a flash on it. I jumped in front of it and the flash would go off. And I remember the guy next to me going like, he just looked at me like, you're not being very professional. And I remember telling him, going like, hey, look, this is my first time. Give me a break, okay?
He said you weren't being professional because you were taking a selfie of yourself.
Yeah, because
Hear that, you little millennials out there that selfies everywhere. Yeah,
and the flash was going off. And I said, I honestly, I looked at him and said, I don't know if I've never been here before. I don't know if I'm ever going to get this chance ever again. So I'm going to do it. So if you can't deal with it, deal with it.
Uh-huh.
And, I was going to do it. And I did a couple selfies like that. He didn't say another word. And as we all know, there was no more chances to ever do it again.
Right. Well, and that's and plus, you had 24, maybe 36 exposure film. You weren't going to waste a frame taking a picture of yourself.
Right. And you don't know whether you're in focus, the shuttle's in focus.
Yeah.
It's good. You're
That's
good.
a classic. Another
It's-
good light balance and everything there.
I know.
If I did that, I'd look like a white
And it's
sheep
got
there.
it actually had the timestamp in the original that you can see.
Oh yeah,
that,
there you are. Yeah, 126 right
to prove it.
there. All right.
Again, this was the first day. Oh, my little cat looks like it's launching. So yeah, no, that was the first day with the scrub. Because it was clear, it was a lot more focused, and
They were scrubbed because they couldn't get the door locked.
they couldn't get the
basically.
door locked, and then the winds picked up, and
By the time they got it, they got a a drill up there to fix it, and it went dead. And so the other drill got up there late, and they got out of the window. They had winds and stuff like that going on.
And as you heard the other day, Tom went home because pretty much everybody was told it wasn't going to go the next day. That is that's the grandstands that used to be at the press site. It's no
Yeah.
longer there, but I was up in the grandstands. But that was the morning of the launch, so you can see there wasn't a lot of people. They had the monitors in the front where you could watch what was going on and figure out what was going on.
They did not have those grandstands for Apollo, did they? Because you see a lot of people, they're not covered.
I don't know. That's a question for Mark and Tom
Okay. Or Marty.
or Marty.
Yeah.
I think it was out there.
Okay. He thinks it was out there.
That was again.
What's the team? 6 minutes? 6 hours?
1 hour, 6 minutes, and 5 seconds the morning of the launch. I'm bundled up. You can see how the white caps are on the water. It was about 30 degrees.
8 o'clock in the morning. Launch was a little after 9.
No, 11:28.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Thank you. 20.
It's sorry, didn't mean.
Yeah.
But it was very cold, and I set the timer again, ran in front, film. You take your chances and you pay your money and you get what you get.
Yeah,
And
you don't. Yeah,
you
you
don't
can't
know.
look and see your pictures on film. You have to see that day later or the next day what you got.
And that being
There's the ignition.
the launch, you can see how it looks like it's out of focus, but it was not so much out of focus as the heat waves were generating.
Right across the steam, the evaporation of the pond there.
And once
so
it got
cold.
above the water,
Surprised you didn't have fog.
and yeah, you had 36 exposures, and being a newbie, I went through 36 exposures way too fast, because between the first camera and the second camera is when the anomaly actually happened. So
Dean Babcock wants to know how close were you
I was at the
taking
present,
this
so
photo?
3.5 miles roughly, right
Okay.
there by the VAB.
Could you take that shot now, or is those trees
yeah,
in the way?
yeah. The
That
trees,
tree line's probably
tree
in the way.
line has grown up a lot in the way. You can get this. Now, this was going on a 28-degree inclination, so it was going east. And it had been going north, like to the space station later in the program. By this point in time, you would have seen just the belly as it's going away.
Left SRB there is not the bad one. It's on the other
That's it.
side.
Right.
That's about it.
It was
the moment
right-
to throttle up.
It was right after this,
71 seconds.
and then. the
So, what was your
anomaly-
gut reaction looking through your first rocket launch? You'd never seen a shuttle launch before. You're looking through the lens of your camera.
Well, it was surreal. It was like Twilight. Everybody was clapping and cheering. I say everybody, the majority of people were clapping and cheering because when the news people would focus on the launch, they would focus in so close into the shuttle that you always saw the shuttle. And when it would break away from the booster and the tank and this, they would follow the shuttle and you wouldn't see what happens to everything. And so everybody thought that this was the moment that the boosters had broken away from the stack and that they were falling off and going away and the shuttle was going and there's a giant cloud of smoke and you expected it to come out, like I say in the story, it's like you expected it to be like Roy Rogers coming out of a high-o silver cloud of smoke, and it wasn't that. And the people realized that something was going on, something was wrong. I mean, you didn't know what. There was complete silence over the net. You didn't know what the trails were. The speaker set, right? You didn't know what was going on. It was the last time they ever allowed the VIPs in the parking lot with the news people, because the news people were, you had the ones following the launch, and then you had some centered directly on the families themselves, which, in hindsight, was not good.
Yeah, Marty's escorted some of those, haven't you, Marty?
No, the VIPs, no, I never have.
Oh, okay. I thought the LCCs where a lot of them went to see the launches or the.
Well, the families went on top of the LCC building. Yeah, but I never. I
That
was
was a
never
change
escorted.
he's saying, is that they were out there with the press, and
After
then
that, yeah.
they decided to move them to another thing there. So
No, the families were out there. STS-1.
Right, they were
On top
out
of the
there, but that
LCC.
was after that particular launch, because of the tragedy, they moved them to that. After that, they moved them over to the LCC so that the press didn't
Was it
have
their
access to
fans?
them.
The families were there they were under the LCC roof
Right,
for STS-1.
right.
That's what you're
I
saying.
mean,
They
after
moved.
25, after Challenger is when, okay,
I mean, for STS-1,
right.
from day one on Space Shuttle, the families are on top of the LCC
Okay.
roof.
no, you're saying some families
Some-
were out at the
right.
press corps.
They had different
And that
sites for
they-
the families.
Oh, maybe friends and family, but not the husbands and the children.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those would be
so-
expected to be at the best place. So they got the cousins and the in-laws and outlaws out there at the
Right.
press site there.
And I'm
So-
not sure,
So this lingered around quite a bit. So.
I'm sure the clock is in there somewhere, but the cloud, there was no, there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of wind, and people
The
that have been,
clock's right behind you.
is it?
There. I can't tell what it says there. the
Um,
time.
So
That's all right, Marty.
somewhere. Oh. Anyway, this was just a few minutes after the launch. There wasn't a lot of people out there.
You can see, wow, what a sparse press crowd.
Anybody that's been out there now knows that there's a lot more people just for a regular everyday launch, just a Falcon 9 launch. And they had gotten so routine that there wasn't a lot of coverage for it. And then people kind of like were milling around because nobody knew exactly what was going on, and NASA wasn't telling us what anything either.
No, they were trying to figure it out too. They said loss of telemetry, on there. Carlton, Tom Musiak says Mike Brown said a lot of photographers were out of film at the time of the explosion.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well-
probably putting another roll in as they.
That's what had happened to me. I'd run out between the one camera tracking it with the big lens and the second camera. So that's why I went from the side shot to the falling debris shot. This was the press dome
I
inside.
would say that does look like Zarella over there.
The
in
green jacket on the
green
right
jacket,
side.
yeah.
I believe that's
Left
John
side.
Zarella. The one in the
Oh,
red.
the one on the right? Oh, yeah, that would be John there.
And the one in
Right
the
here.
red, right, correct. The one in the red was Howard Benedict from AP.
Uh-huh.
The one in the white
There's one
sweater
not many women in there. That was
might have
probably,
been Sue Butler Hannafin, who was with Time Life, and the gentleman sitting down right in front of right there. I believe that was Harry Colcom because that was his corner.
Uh-huh.
of the dome.
So this is inside the dome.
That was
Look at the
inside the
beautiful
dome.
paneling, wood paneling on there. We had that in our conference room till about 2 years ago.
So
Uh,
it was
and this was a strange room because if you're ever in a circular room, the cacophony of voice, that'd be pretty noisy in there. That's
and
what I'm trying to say.
over
Wasn't it?
on it was very noisy, and it was like just the constant hum of what's going on, and people, nobody knew what was going on. And over on what would be the left side of this picture um, was a bank of telephones, and eventually within minutes almost, the entire southeast coast was telephone system had shut down. It was so overwhelmed with
Wow, really?
phones, people, the landlines,
Coming out of
because
Florida.
it was well before car
Well,
phones and stuff.
1986 in the last century. Marty?
Tom Usiak is saying the grandstand was there for Apollo, and the
Yeah.
countdown clock came after Apollo
All
12.
right.
And Dean Babcock is asking, how close were you to the pad the night before the launch?
Well, I think from what I understand, the perimeter fence is 1,800 feet from dead center pad, and we were maybe another couple hundred feet from it. So not much more than a couple thousand feet from the orbiter.
Thanks for the question. There's the countdown clock. There's recognize Hugh Harris there with his headset on.
This was about 4 o'clock. They did not say anything till about 4 o'clock. There was a press conference. There's a press conference coming up. Hurry up and wait for the press conference. It's coming. It's going to be now. And eventually it came about 4:15, and Hugh Harris, and that's Jess Moore, who was shuttle director at the time, they came out, and it was that, and the fact that they had lowered the flag to half mast was the first definite inkling. We knew that it wasn't going to end good. I mean, up to then, everybody was still holding out hope that somehow someone in the crew had survived, somehow, figuring nobody had, but you still held out hope. But it wasn't until 4:15 that afternoon, I guess, when we got our first kind of heads up, as you say, that.
And is this the press conference?
This was a press conference later on in the afternoon, early evening, where Jake Garn flew in, then Vice President Bush and NASA Administrator Bill Graham, and John Glenn came down to meet and talk with the families of the crew. But before they did that, they stopped to say a few words to the news media at the press site. And I mean, I started off that morning going like, "Hey, I'm going to go see a space shuttle launch. I'm up close and personal." And by the end of the day, I'm standing in front of vice presidents and John Glenn, and it was very surreal, very surreal.
Well, it was, yeah, it had to be surreal. And then let's see what else then you go home, and what was that like? You get home in the afternoon or early evening, and you turn the TV on, of course.
I was married at the time, and she had been recording all the news for me. I honestly, I don't remember anything after I got home. I don't remember anything until the next day, because I was in a state of shock. I was not what you'd call a good reporter at the time. I mean, a reporter's supposed to be aware of his senses, aware of his surroundings, and I was not. I don't remember that night. I remember not going to work that night in Orlando. I remember getting up in the morning and not coming back over to the Space Center. I remember getting up, going out, getting the car, and driving around Orlando, hitting every bookstore, and I haven't told many people this because most people go like, "Ah, shit, this guy's nuts." But it was a state of shock. You work your life for something like this. And I went to every bookstore, every grocery store. I wanted to find a newspaper. I wanted to find a magazine that did not have a headline that said the space shuttle had exploded. And I couldn't do it. And after a couple hours, that's when it finally hit me that
Hmm.
I had watched 7 people die that morning. And it
Well, that's awesome. That's he's you live these emotions, and I'm glad you're in touch with him. It was quite a event that you did. And then, did you photograph STS-26
I
return to
did.
flight
I
two
did.
and a half years later?
I did. I photographed 26. I stayed with the crew. We went in and saw the reconstruction of Challenger several times, which led to the successful launch of 26. And the thing I remember most about 26 is the USAC brothers, of course, and they set me up with a remote setup. Again, I don't know whether to smack them upside the head and say thank you for making my life nice, or thanks
They were
for
like junkies feeding an
yeah.
addict.
Yes.
Now you can't even.
No, I would
This
never.
guy's at angst if one of those noisy SpaceX rockets that we see one every
Everybody
4 days.
everybody should have
You always want to be
friends.
there. And
Everybody should have friends like the USACs for whatever your hobby is. But I remember when 26 finally came to fruition, the morning of the launch. It I don't remember zero. I'm not sure the 8 minutes that it took to ascent into space. I don't I don't even know if I was breathing for those. I mean, obviously I must have been breathing, but I wasn't aware of breathing until the tank was gone, it was in orbit, and then you could kind of start breathing again and you felt safe again.
Mhm. Well, this is some very personal stories, and the people who lived all these three tragedies that we talk about at the end of January have their little. I think you have a little place in your heart, for the families and the don't you? I mean, it's like a.
I got to meet the Jarvises, very Bruce and Ellen Jarvis, the father and mother of Bruce Jarvis. They lived in Orlando, and it's a very strange thing. Their house got broken into because they were such notoriety. They were over covering the launch where their son died in the crash, or in the anomaly, and their house got broken into and they got robbed that morning
Oh my
because
gosh!
people knew that they weren't going to be home. But I got to know them through reasons I won't go into, but I ended up getting Christmas cards. I would go over and have dinner with them. I was able to give them personal items that they were not able to get from any other sources. And that was,
Hmm.
it's
Talk about an unlucky guy, Gregory Jarvis, bumped by Jake Garn, and then bumped by
and
Bill Nelson, two politicians, as he was a company astronaut like Charlie Walker, going up for their company and doing things up in there. So uh, we've got Bruce Jacobs on here. After it exploded, they moved the families down to one of the VIP offices on the fourth floor of the LCC, opposite the elevators. I went past and heard them in there on this thing. And Bruce also says, my understanding, the phones stopped working because they were turned them off. They didn't want any information going out that wasn't official. And he believes that was a standard operating procedure.
we could not
So,
even get, they wouldn't even give us the temperature. Something as basic as what was the temperature at the launch time. NASA wouldn't even give us that information until later on. So
Bruce,
yeah,
Bruce
everything.
Jacobs, our fabulous IT guy, and check
Thank you,
the
Bruce.
title there, Bruce.
He said he fixed it.
Pardon me.
He already fixed it.
Oh, already fixed it. Oh, right. Thank you, buddy. And Neil 1030 on top of that for us there. Thank you. So we've Tom Santano says there was such a sense of grief in the aftermath, and the how long did it take you to process that through all the, not now it was, cable news network was just coming on,
Well,
and
that's
so
just
this
it.
was
It was
24/7 now.
CNN was the only one showing it live, and now with the 24/7 with everything, it's hard to explain how processing kids today, and I say kids, anybody under 50 is a kid to me. Processing it. It was probably 10 years before I could watch a fireworks show because I would see fireworks go up, and to me that was the
Ooh.
Challenger going up, and I'd see it explode, and so it was years. And if I see a fireworks display now, I immediately think of that. So it's still it still processes it. I'm not numb to the fact, but I understand. I just will never understand how it happened, how somebody allowed it to happen. I think is the best way to put it, I guess.
Well, plenty of books and commentaries and so forth on there, and I've been told by a couple launch directors and NASA VIPs that the launch director Gene Thomas did not know that it was that bad, and so forth, and gave the go for it. So, well, let's end on a high. Is there something that you want to share with everybody about this accident that you'd like for them to know about you or the
No,
other
if
people around
anybody,
you or
I'm
whatever?
on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, self promotion here, Instagram, Twitter. Anybody wants to get in touch with me and talk about this, ask me any questions personally off the air. I have no problems talking to people about this. Feel free to. I made so many friends through Countdown Magazine and John Ronkowitz, and I've got people that I see out there now that were subscribers to this magazine that say, "Oh, I was stationed in the Middle East, and the only thing that kind of kept me going was every month I would get the Countdown magazine, and I'd see your pictures, and if you said it, if you printed it, I knew what you were telling me was the truth." And it did me good to know that I was a little bit a part of this. But contact me, anybody, and I'll be glad to talk to you and share insight into it.
Well, Dean Babcock, thanks you for sharing your experience. And Marty, Mitch Rothman has a question there, please, on that UCA family microphone.
Yeah, Carlton, did you ever attend any briefings of the Accident Investigation Board?
I attended, I ended up quitting my full-time job to make Challenger my full-time job. I not only attended the briefings that were held at the press center, I attended some of the Challenger Commission, the Warren Commission. No, that was the other guy.
Rogers.
The Rogers Commission hearings. They had a Rogers Commission hearing at the Space Center in their IMAX theater. And it was strange to be listening to these people talk about this tragedy, and they were still playing the IMAX movie, and you'd hear the shuttles launch in the next theater over. But yes, I attended all of them. I still have all my notes, all my notebooks, my notes, my photos, everything that I'm trying to get together. And I'm just not a real organized person. So if anybody is organized and wants to help, come on down.
Well, thank you so much, Carlton, for sharing this emotional and personal story about your his first of over 700 rocket launches was witnessing the Challenger there. And we want to go out on a high note here. And Mark Usiak took this photograph for the first landing out at Kennedy Space Center out there. And that's a cool shot. And Big Brother Tom, this was out of his shared roll of film that was left out there for, I think, 3 weeks. That is a fabulous picture.
There was not a cloud in the sky, and the only thing that was in the sky, I got one picture back, and there was a lot of white birds flying in the.
Yes, that's the classic picture there with the birds. Where's the birds at, Tom? You didn't. Well, of course, that's a remote, so on there. But And let's show the crew as we honor them and their families. And they've all been 29 years later, they're not forgotten. We did a great job out at Spaceview Park. Thank you, John Zarella and Nick Thomas and Bert Dicht for their giving the short bios of the crews. There they are with like go-kart helmets and just blue flight suit. Nothing to really help them survive. They did get a little air pumped into their helmet if they needed it there. So we always remember them every year, every day of the year here at the American Space Museum. As 3 or 4 times a day I walk by our little gallery tribute to them, and we've got these huge photos of Columbia and Challenger and the Apollo men. So thank you all for watching today. We got Martine Jarina. Thank you. Steve Jokums, Tom Celentano, Dave Stange, Doug Forrest, Neil 1030, Mark Usiak, Tom Usiak, Dean Babcock, and Mitch Rothman. And thank you, Bruce Jacobs, for watching today.
Thank you all.
He's taken grades on Marty's expert use of our Streamlabs program there today. Thank you, Marty. This was quite an interesting episode of Stay Curious, Carlton, and thank you for sharing that with us today. So, end of another great week here at the American Space Museum. I talked to Germans. I've talked to people from London today. I've talked to United Kingdom. We've got people from Canada in today, and all across the fruited plain. So business is good here on a typical warm Florida winter day. It hit 80 today. The last time it did that was the day after Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So yay for us and everybody else in the country. Hope that you're enjoying good weather. And get out and do a little stargazing over the weekend. We've talked about that's Venus and the bright star in the west after sunset. Jupiter's directly overhead. And Mars is rising in the east, okay? And Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are somewhere in there. So get you a star map and check it out and get a little serenity under the stars. You know I love to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Carlton. So, and we'll tell you about a dinner with the Fram 2 astronauts, hopefully, on next week. Monday we'll probably do astronomy, backyard astronomy, and then get into our usual routine. Got some guests lined up, as always, and we need you to help support us by watching and telling your friends to do so. So until next week, I'm Mark Marquette, thanking you all for watching, and thanking my good buddy here for giving us some great pictures and other things that you do on a weekly basis, Carlton. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, sir.
Well, hope to see you in our museum. To what?
To
bridge the space between us.